Now, he's become one of the most trailed figures in the history of Nigerian politics, a man who is unquestionably playing a significant role in the gigantic project that is Nigeria, if not yet as a winner, certainly as a motivator. In a world that reflects the constantly shifting political alliances in Nigeria's political leaders calculate how best to secure power, Peter Obi moved away from the main opposition PDP and the man whose presidential bid he'd backed in 2019, Atiku Abubakar, but who is now one of his main opponents. But beyond setting in motion the urgency that's required to reform Nigeria and inspiring millions of young people, can Mr. Obi's Labour Party provide the structure that will help him deliver Aso Rock to his supporters? Because amid all the optimism and the high expectations that his supporters have, he'll first need to show them that he is a winner by achieving victory in the upcoming presidential election. Let's face it, at the end of the day, it's all about winning, isn't it? And if he does win, where are the Labour Party foundations that will support such a victory and help to make it a success? Is the party likely to win ballots at the governorship level, for instance, and at the National Assembly, enough to give Mr. Obi the practical political tools with which to finish the job? Well, for a closer look at the Peter Obi phenomenon, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined now from our Lagos studios by Doyin Okupe, Director General of the Peter Obi Campaign Foundation. Thank you very much indeed for making out the time to talk to us. And people, particularly the youth, have been admiring your candidate, Peter Obi, and appear to be very supportive of him. What is it about him that does it?
Thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, viewers. I'm so happy you use the correct words. Peter Obi is a phenomenon, and that is the truth. He's a new version of, the hope. He represents the hope for the youths. What you are seeing is actually, a political tsunami of a kind. A movement, a revolution. And that is why most of the stakeholders and political elites who do not comprehend or understand fully what this is, take it to be something not too serious. But the younger ones, the more mobile, the more educated, and the more agile Nigerians, the more patriotic Nigerians, are those who are propelling this movement. I can tell you from a vantage position, because I am the Director General of this organization, and if I actually claim any glory for what is going on, or attribute it just solely to Peter Obi, I will be lying. Now, if whatever you are saying, 90% of it is propelled, is self-propelled, self-funded, and self-activated by the many young people in Nigeria and in the diaspora. And any nation, no matter what it is or how it is, that ignores the voices of its youth will definitely have itself to blame. What is coming to Nigeria is something that we haven't seen before, perhaps not even on the shores of Africa. We have a political figure that has proven integrity, that has character, that has pedigree, that says and has evidence to show that he says what he does, and everything so far has been predicated on integrity, which is extremely very lacking among our leaders, both present and past leaders. And because everybody is yearning for a true and an honest change, that we are even making a mistake. The youth, yes, are the one propelling it, but even the fathers and the mothers and the uncles are silently queuing up and lining up and joining the movement.
Well, I'm going to push you on this. I mean, because let's face it, it's Peter Obi versus...
You can.
Well, I certainly will. I mean, it's Peter Obi versus three big political guns, Atiku, Tinubu and Kwankwaso. If this was a football match, I mean, it's bound to go into overtime and eventually penalties, isn't it? Can your candidate, Peter Obi, and his Labour Party squad do it in 90 minutes?
Charles, you surprise me. The hood does not make the monk. You know that that's a very popular saying in English language. And for a fact, what we see are decorated caricatures, political caricatures, who have essentially, principally expired and have nothing to offer. And the people can see through the masquerades. You call them, this is a game that is, that will be decided even if it were a football match in the first half of the match. It's not going to go into any extra time. Tell me, what will the APC, for instance, what is APC going to tell Nigerians? I don't want to criticize anybody. That is not our game. And if you look at my principal, he doesn't talk about anybody. He only talks about issues. So I'm just going to toe that same line and tell, look, both APC and PDP are an expiring commodity, but because they have been with us for so long, the nostalgic effect of their existence makes us to think that they are unconquerable. We don't see them like that. In any case, who decides who stays in a political ring fight? It is the electorate. And you saw yourself, and everybody has seen this. What happened at when Peter Obi honored an invitation to come to a night vigil in Dunamis Church. People talk about Peter Obi as existing just purely on social media, which is a terrible joke. In that hall, I was there. There are over 150,000 Nigerians, and that is not an Igbo. It's not an Igbo church. The pastor of Dunamis is from Benue State. It's a pan-Nigerian church in the capital city of Nigeria with a lot of young people and middle-aged people and all that. And I was the one that was asked to write the entourage of Peter Obi, and I just wrote Doyin Okupe, Obase Osaluka, Peter Obi. I did not even put any appellation. But see, the whole place, broke out in riots. It became uncontrollable. The pastor, Mrs., had to use everything that was inside of her and a lot of intellect and persuasion to stop the crowd from shouting and chanting. Can anybody in his true sense say that this was social media? We've told them it has broken the bounds of social media. It has gone beyond Twitter. It has gone beyond Facebook. This is something that resides in the hearts and minds of Nigerians all over the country, including in the diaspora. And it is not based on fad. It is not something that is going to go away, because this is a real personality. He says what he does. He says that, look, we must move from consumption to production. We must stop the profligacy. We must stop the wastage. We must show discipline, fiscal discipline. We must exercise a lot of constraints in spending public money. And these are the right things. These are the things that have put us down over the years.
Right. Well, absolutely.
Here we have, in your language, a phenomenon.
Right. But do you Mr. Okupe, that popular interest in Peter Obi is going to drain away before voting begins, and people will once again, which we've seen before, be driven by the real issues in their lives, which is where the next meal is going to come from and which politician has the deepest pockets?
I'm amazed. You see an agile man, a man that is almost restless. He moves like a meteorite. He's a tireless worker. These are not like he says, go and verify. These are not my English talk. I'm not just talking. I'm telling you what has happened. When Peter Obi, Peter Obi is not going to tire out. That is highly improbable. I've been working very closely with this gentleman for the past 4 months or 5 now. He is tireless. He's just highly motivated, and the success we are getting, the encouraging we are getting from the Nigerian people, it has constituted the fuel that is pushing him to do more.
Well, I understand all that.
To get tired.
I understand all that, Mr.
Yes.
Okupe. I apologize for interrupting you, but we haven't got all the time in the world.
I don't mind.
I want to get to important things. I mean, let's look at the practical things that are needed to win an election in Nigeria. What about crucial things like funding? How much are you struggling with that?
Well, Peter Obi, I can tell you up to date, Peter Obi has funded his campaign solely. This is a hard-working, successful businessman, and he has made money not from fraud, not from graft, not from rent, but from hard work and sweat. 25 years ago, Peter Obi was, the chief executive of a company in the UK that was that was worth more than 25 million pounds. That was 25 years ago. You check the other candidates 25 years ago. Who were they? Where were they? What wealth did they have? So here it's not, we do, they say that Obi is stingy. Obi is not stingy. Obi is just against, profligacy. Obi is just against wasteful spending. Obi will commit money to where and when it is needed. In the next 3 weeks, every state in this country will have a labor office paid for, with a flag, with the signpost, and with people fully furnished secretariats all over. And we are funding this. Of course, we are under tremendous pressure to open up our gates and our accounts so that people can donate generously. We are under tremendous pressure, but we are yet to do that, because he says, Doyin, let me push this as far as I can go first, before we start to take other people's money to do this. And if you look at the kind of support that we are getting, you will see that even those who have stolen money will not be able to match the amount of resources that we are we are going to deploy in this game. We are not worried about money at all. We are not. Just as we are not worried about resources, we are not worried about capability, we are not worried about mental capability, we are not worried about ideas that we need, we are not worried about what it will take to change and to reset the nation. You cannot say that for any of the other two. I don't know why any of the other 3 candidates. You cannot. Right.
Let me come in there, because something that's been raised by people who are political sort of pundits and political experts is the issue of structures. Because, you may have Peter Obi, but obviously he's part of the Labour Party, and you don't seem to have people from the Labour Party who can win seats in the National Assembly or at the governorship level. If Mr. Obi wins, how is he going to govern without the Labour Party having enough seats in the National Assembly or winning any of the states at governorship level? It sounds like he won't be able to govern comfortably.
Charles, Peter Obi is not a Cinderella candidate. He's a real candidate. And the Labour Party is not a lame dog. The Labour Party, we may not have our full-fledged number of membership of the National Assembly, but we have not been playing. We will at least field candidates in nothing less than 80 to 85% of the seats available, and we are going to also, in similar vein, field about 85% of the governorship and the House of Assembly membership. So we are not going to be naked in power. I am so glad that you have even assumed that Peter Obi was going to win. I thought you were going to talk about what is now becoming a stale rhetoric, that, we don't have structures.
Well,
we don't have structures, and, people are worried about structures because they do not understand what we are in. We are in a political revolution. You tell me, does a revolution have a structure? The people, the masses, the Nigerian electorates are the structure. Wherever people are going to vote, it is those who are going to vote that constitute our structures.
Well, Mr. Okupe,
PDP,
let me
APC, buy structures. We don't need to buy structures.
Okay.
Those structures are collapsing, and they're going to fall off.
Let me make something clear, though. We're not assuming by any stretch of the imagination that Mr. Obi is going to win the election. We're saying if he wins. So it's a hypothetical.
If you do, you will have been correct.
It's a hypothetical.
It's a correct assumption.
Yeah, but it's not an assumption. It's a hypothetical situation. So let's be clear on that, because the election hasn't taken place, so we can't predict. It's a very sound hypothesis. Right, but can I ask you this?
You can.
Can I ask you this? In terms of, because you've talked about the broad strokes of this. Let's return to the Labour Party, because in terms of ideology, Peter Obi appears to be a capitalist. You talked about him running a big firm and all the rest of it in the UK quite a few years ago. Does he share the same philosophy as the unions, for example, that dominate the Labour Party and are often socialist in their outlook?
You go and check history. Usually when you have a great movement, usually somebody comes from the outside to modify it. Somebody comes from the outside to redirect it. Somebody comes from the outside to energize it. That is what Peter Obi is to the Labour Party. Of course, Peter Obi believes in business, believes in trade, and all that. But you see, where we interface, because I come from the same class like him, where we interface with the labor is the issue that is most relevant to the Nigerian, matters for now. And that is the issue of production. That is the issue of shifting the country from consumption into production. And what is labor all about? Labor is all about workers. Labor is all about, when you talk about production, you are talking about farmers, you are talking about workers, you are talking about manufacturing, you are talking about those who work in manufacturing industries, you are talking about teachers who educate our people, who go ahead from the universities and then begin to produce. So we and labor, we interface at that point, and he shares the same ideology, which is the most crucial and relevant matter.
Okay, let me.
The issue of production,
right.
Labor, yeah.
Okay, let me come in there again, because we're moving closer to the elections. Insecurity is a gaping crack that's tearing Nigeria apart, along with continuing economic turmoil, a huge debt burden, dwindling government revenues, and the Naira daily losing value. That's a recipe for the sort of challenges for an incoming government that border on disaster. Is your candidate thinking ahead to all of that? How does he plan to tackle that multi-pronged crisis?
Your diagnosis is absolutely correct. The most pestering matter in Nigeria now is the issue of insecurity. And quite honestly, there's a lot of insincerity in the management of our insecurity. And if we have an honest man to sit down at the helm of affairs, what do we need to do? We need, there's a rule of thumb in the military that if you are going to dislodge bandits or insurgents and all that, you must have 3 or 4 times the number of the insurgents as your foot soldiers. So we don't have enough soldiers on ground. We don't have enough boots on ground. So what do we need to do? We must find a way to increase the manpower, locally, or find a way to get assistance elsewhere. And we need to have proper and accountable funding. the bandits can never ever have access to more funds, than the Nigerian government if we're a serious country. And when you have a person like Peter Obi as the head of state, definitely Nigeria becomes a very, very serious country that will apply funds judiciously. And because of the general disposition of the president at that time, who says that, and it is true, that the more you take people out of poverty, the more you reduce criminality. So on the long run, taking people out of poverty will reduce radicalism, will reduce entry of young people into insurgency and into banditry, and the maintenance. And if you equip your security agencies properly and efficiently, and you motivate them appropriately, I do not believe that the Nigerian army that we know, that we have seen, fight both within and outside our borders, will be lacking. What is presently going on is befuddling. It is inexplicable, but we know that when we get to power, we will root out the insurgents, we will contain and deal with banditry. Nigeria will return to safety. There will be security, because in any case, we want to do business in this land. We cannot do business with people just shooting and killing people and shedding blood all over the place. So the first thing we're going to do is to find a way to ensure that we use all the resources that are within the confines of the government to overpower those who do the negative forces within us. That is going to be done, and that can be taken for granted, for a fact.
Well, you made a lot of references and comparisons between your candidate, Peter Obi, and the other candidates. You're portraying him as a sort of, the good one in comparison to the rest. But surely you must know that there are those who see him as part of the same political elite that people blame for the disastrous situation in this country. I mean, he was a ranking member of the PDP for many years, so some argue that this is not real change. This is simply reincarnation in the Labour Party.
Thank you, Charles. I brought a book here for Nigerians to see. This book is Fighting Corruption is Dangerous by Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. You talked about Nigerian elites. This book addresses Nigerian elites. And inside this book, there is evidence, clinical, classical evidence that Obi is not your everyday elite. He is different. And when we say it, we do not say it just for the sake of saying it. There is evidence. If you can prove, Nigeria has gotten to a stage now. We are, we are very close to 60 years of age. By now, we do not need to guess about those who will lead us. By now, we should have produced enough leaders with integrity and character. There should be enough evidence of anybody who says I want to lead for us to ask him, what have you done in the past? But let me go back to that, your point about, Ellis and this, that Obi is part of it. Obi is a distinct, different political elite. And over the years, he has shown himself to be so. There's no governor in Nigeria living today that when he left office, he left $150 million in the coffers of the administration for the incoming administration. On Okonjo-Iweala's book, page 61, I didn't write this, Obi didn't write this. Okonjo-Iweala says that all the governors refused and were against savings. It was only Obi is written here on page 61, the second paragraph and the last sentence. He said, such as Governor Peter Obi of Anambra State argued for savings but were not supported. So even Okonjo-Iweala here clearly supports the fact that Obi is not your everyday common politician. And if you even recollect, before then was Aganga, Segun Aganga. He was a former minister of finance. When he came, he raved and raged about about the country, establishing a sovereign wealth fund. People laughed. People, the so-called elites of the country then, They derided him. It was only Obi that stood with Ake Aganga and said, we must establish the sovereign wealth fund. If Nigeria has followed the position Obi took, we will not be in this mess we are in today. I was in President Jonathan's administration. In President Jonathan's administration, as a governor, not as a minister, Obi was appointed as an advisor to that president on finance, and he was singularly made a member of the economic management team. There must have been something that Goodluck Jonathan saw. And if there are other people on that panel, Aliko Dangote, and so many other people, Peter Side, they are alive, they are around. You can ask them about the outstanding performance and commendable contribution that Obi made. I'm sorry, sir, Peter Obi is never your common political elite, and was never part of the rot of the past. He has been an outstanding classical.
Okay, I think you've made that point.
Has done things in the most commendable way, different and distinct from all others.
Most robustly and most eloquently. I want to thank you very much indeed, Doyin Okupe, Director General of the Peter Obi Campaign Organization. Thank you very much indeed for joining us there from our studios in Lagos.